All right, guys, this is Vinny Rodriguez, also known as 8-Figure Vision. Guys, it's a new year, it's 2020, it's a new decade, so I'm gonna give you the top 20 books for you to read in 2020, this decade. All right, guys, ready? Let's go. The way the market is going, one main book I would highly recommend that you guys read, make sure you feast your eyes on, is this one, Money Master the Game. Anybody knows, everybody loves Tony Robbins. Guys, I would highly recommend this book. It teaches everything you need to know about the dark side of investing. It talks about basically what kind of different assets to invest in, how do you go about investing, and it gets pretty sophisticated, so it definitely goes in depth. Definitely want to make sure you take some time reading this one. I see a bunch here in this section, so we're just gonna go down and start with personal growth, guys, because if anything you want to change first, you gotta start with the personal growth. So let's dig in here and find out what we find. This one is a staple right here. Guys, if you haven't lived under a rock, I recommend that you read this book. It is probably the most best-selling success book of all time, and every single success guru you hear from today, they've based their success principles on this guy, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. In this book right here contains over 20 years of research of him being taken under the wing of one of the most wealthiest and successful people of all time, Andrew Carnegie, and he put all of the secrets, all of the lessons in here. Guys, have to get this book if you want to learn anything about building wealth, about building success, building a legacy for family. Definitely get this one. It's a must, it's a staple. He made the list again, guys. He made the list. So Tony Robbins makes again the list with the next book, which, guys, this book right here, this is where I learned about the phrase motion creates emotion. Guys, this book literally had me jumping up and down, literally jumping up and down in my seat. This guy teaches you about the physiology behind having a good life, and happiness. I would put this perhaps in the top 5 here, guys, right here. Oh, and between me and you, I actually did a review on the book Awaken the Giant Within, so I would make sure to include a link below to that. That way you guys can also check out the review if you don't want to go through and read the whole book by yourself. I go in depth. So guys, this one is a really more of a wild card. This one right here, if you have more of those philosophical, existential types of questions and you're wondering, hey, I would love to know more about, like, why am I here? How do I, what do I make sense in the rest of the universe? Well, this book explains it, guys, but it's backed by science. It's really good. It's an oldie, but still a goodie. And if you haven't read it, definitely make sure it's part of your repertoire for 2020. The book is called Cosmos by Carl Sagan. Okay, so the one thing that makes this one stick out, this book is A Story of the Human Body by Daniel Lieberman. What makes this book stick out so much is I remember how he had mentioned that the human body is constantly evolving every single day, every moment, right now, even as we speak. And for me, that's what really stuck out the most. And that's why I would put this one right at the list of books for 2020, guys, to definitely make sure that you read. It's gonna go really in depth, combining good stories with, it kind of talks about the different lives of athletes, and then it goes more in depth and looks at the science behind how our bodies throughout the span of time has evolved and how it's still evolving today. So definitely you're gonna be very intrigued to understand kind of where the human physiology is going into the future. And if you have any kids, definitely something that you want to know about what it's gonna look like. Haha, I found it right here. Oh, this is a heavy one, but you gotta get it. This is kind of a gigantic version of it. Maybe should I take it home? Art of War, Lao Tzu, deep philosopher, 1,000 years ago, guys. He was the protege of the protege of the protege of one of the main emperors of China back then. This guy knows his stuff. And when you want to talk about applicable principles that you can apply in your life from back then that have lasted the test of time all the way till today, till this new decade, this, The Art of the War Lao Tzu, is the book to try. Don't get it twisted, all right, from, man, the eye-popping stories about when he was selling t-shirts in the back of his van, to him being a mogul, an investor, an influencer, a brand on Shark Tank. Guys, this is a book to read. This is for those of you who are building your business, who, you know, maybe you have a side hustle or something. This right here is going to teach you about having the heart and the hustle and unlock the power of the broke. Guys, you gotta read this. Power of the Broke by DAYMOND. John actually got to meet the guy before. He's awesome. So Power of Broke, gotta read it. If you want to go, like go as fast as you can for 2020 in this decade, I got the go-to guide for you guys. Never eat alone. And I just noticed you're probably seeing this upside down. That's why I'm reading it for you. So Never Eat Alone, it's called, guys. That's much better, that way you can see it. So it's called Never Eat Alone. All right, this book right here is all about prospecting. You can open literally any page in here and you're gonna find different tips and different hacks for prospecting, for meeting people, all the stuff that's in here, all the goodies in here. Definitely carry this book around with you, and when you're on the train, when you're on the bus, when you're, you know, in the mall or anything, you have some tools here you can access to really network effectively. Another oldie but goodie is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. This book right here, it gives a very good depiction of what life, of basically how do you go about and take a point in time or an action, an activity, be able to compound on that, sort of as if you were stacking coins on top of each other, right? What is, or even if you were to look at that from a monetary standpoint, basically taking what compound interest is and applying action in a form that is going to compound over time. This guy, this was a genius book. I know thousands of people have, maybe even millions at this point. I know it's a best-selling book for years. Definitely make sure that you read this to jumpstart 2020. Also, if you want to read more about the compound effect, you want to know right now more details about the book and the inside of it without having to read, I also have a review for that. I'll put the YouTube video link below. Okay, guys, so this book totally caught me by surprise. And I've been hearing of this book for years. So I finally decided to give it a look because I know that Ray Dalio has been heavily promoting this book recently. The guy's made all the money that he could in the world, and now he's had a purpose. He's more purpose. He's really working on how can I serve more people? How can I give them the wisdom that I've learned over all these years? And he really outlaid it very well in this book in detail. Guys, I read the first page and I had to read it about 7 times that week. I read it every single day, the first page, guys. And the second page, I even went more in depth. And for the following months, this book had become my Bible. This book has so many principles. And I think if there's anything I can learn from this is he had a set of principles that he used to make his decisions in life. So essentially, that has inspired me to follow certain principles, which I call an algorithm, that has contributed to my success. I did a live on that on Facebook, and I'd be happy to send you guys a recording of that. I put as well in the link below. Make sure to check that out because it's gonna open up a whole bunch of a different sense of ideas for you as far as what kind of rules can you set in place to truly become more effective and more productive. So this book, guys, this is like a Bible right here for anybody who's in business or anything you want to do in life and be successful. If you really want to give somebody a gift, this would be the gift to get them. This book right here, The Richest Man in Babylon, has it is a fictional book, right? So it doesn't necessarily cater towards a it doesn't have real examples. However, it's so vivid, it's so straight to the point, and the principles that are discussed, right? It was almost necessary to put it through a fictional story. That way the concepts are easier to grasp, right? So it takes place back during the time of Babylon, and it went over specific principles that the richest man in Babylon did, where he had taught his disciples and the people who had sought his guidance. So very interesting book, talking about different principles to apply to your life if you want to build wealth. Now, there are some of these are actual things that what I like. It's a quick read and you can do it today. What's interesting about this book is every Barnes & Noble that I go to, I only ever find one copy of this, right? And within good reason. It is a best-selling book, which means that it sells quite often, and the book itself is about sales. So if you're ever just maybe getting into sales now, or let's say you are just starting to build a business, or you're thinking about it, or maybe let's say for those of you who are like, oh man, I'm already good, I already am great at what I do, I already have the success, yet you know internally that you're hitting a plateau and you wish that you can do better, right? You wish that you can do 10 times, 5 times better than where you are. This book, literally speaking, is going to teach you how to do that. And this book, guys, I did an in-depth, actually I did 2 reviews on this book I like so much. You guys can find it in, I'll also make sure to include that as well. But this book right here, guys, is my favorite book of all time. I think out of every business book that I've ever read, this would be my most favorite. And it's a very simple reason. If you look closely, you can see that in each section, at the end of each chapter, there's an actual exercise that you get to do. So that exercise is basically a summary of the previous chapter. So it really walks you through and has you taking action right there and then before you even go to the next chapter. Most writers or authors wait until the end of the book and then you go take action. This is things that you do right now. It's a workbook built into an actual, a philosophical book, really. At the end of the day, it's a philosophical book. And there are a bunch of terminologies in here, but the guy, it's very simple writing. It's easy to understand, and guys, you have, this is another one. 2020, if you want to do things in a big way, this is the book to get. Let me just interject here quickly. This is also a great author. I got to meet him a while back in Miami. His name is John Maxwell. He's published somewhere around 100 business books in his lifetime, guys. Literally any of these books that you grab, you'll get something of tremendous value from it. When I was a kid, I used to love reading. My mother actually always used to give me books about, my mother and father used to give me books about the planets. And I don't know, for some reason, I was just always fascinated with learning about the different planets. And essentially, it was just always something that piqued my interest. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an architect, an artist, or an astronaut. Imagine that. I've actually done 2 of those, but I haven't been an astronaut yet. So essentially, however, these were just always something that fascinated me, just the sheer power, magnitude of the planets. This one did come out this decade, this book, right? So it is important to definitely feast your eyes on this. Now I'm going to give you guys some alternatives to this book, and because the concepts discussed in here are very similar to concepts discussed in a few other books. So first of all, Linchpin, Seth Godin, great author, very raw information in here. Why I recommend this book for you guys is because I know most of us in 2020 are trying to break out. We're trying to be different. We're trying to get out of, right, this type of environment that's been keeping us down. And the fact is, that most of the reason why most of us haven't changed or gotten to a point of really improving ourselves is essentially because of our current environment. So he addresses that in this book, right? Your current environment and being that linchpin. He talks about that shift that's going to be required, that shift that you have to make to push yourself beyond the culture that's been keeping you where you're at and helping getting you to where you want to go. So I highly recommend this book when it comes to how do you shift yourself and either outside of that culture or really become the main, transform yourself to become the main driver in the culture of the organization that you're in today, whether you're an employee, whether you're in some other version of organization, maybe you're in a leadership position or you own a company. This is a book that's really going to shift some things for you. Now, an alternative to that, I would say something like Switch is another great book that has similar concepts in there. So if you can't get your hands on this, then I definitely would put that on the nominees list. For 2020 is everybody right now needs to start getting into YouTube, and not as a consumer. Most of us are consuming YouTube, watching videos, but really start, I would challenge you to look at YouTube in a form of marketing and how you can get yourself really out there, start building a presence, building a brand, building a following. So find something. I'm not necessarily saying this book, I haven't read this book, but I'm saying find something that will really get you involved in YouTube marketing. I'm gonna shock you with this one. All right, we're gonna get away from the business talk for a while. Let's talk about 2020 and let's talk about right now the awakening that is happening. I consider it an awakening that is happening worldwide right now, and for decades it has been creeping up in popularity because it has been backed by science, it has been backed by facts, and a lot of the world's leading researchers have finally started to put together all of their decades of research into documents that now is read by masses of people. And if any of you have known, you've seen all these diets out there, all these different programs that are out there, highly marketable. The keto diet movement has been big, bulletproof diet, all these other things. Now, I'm going to be real with you here. I don't recommend any of those, actually, and I will tell you that I am biased in this case. I've been vegan for 5 years, and it has given me a significant amount of energy. It has given me, I haven't had to rely on any type of medicine for over the past 5 years. I've had almost less than a handful of sicknesses, not even to describe even a cough. Guys, my health, my well-being, my energy, my stamina is remarkable. Even last time I went to the doctor just for a regular physical, because we have to supposedly visit the doctor for a physical, he told me, hey, there's nothing wrong with you. I wish that more people actually had your health symptoms. So he was quite impressed, and the fact that I didn't have to use any medicine for it. So speaking of which, Dr. Michael Greger has published an intense resource here that describes everything having to do with a plant-based diet. Guys, I know you've heard of it, you've heard of the movement, you've heard of how big and popular it's become. Everything you see on TV now having to do with plant-based diet, having to do with veganism, right? And you see these big institutions now, such as Dunkin' Donuts, coming out with their plant-based burger, right? You start seeing companies like Kentucky Fried Chicken coming out with a plant-based chicken meal. You see many different companies, even McDonald's following along the track. You see a lot of other, everywhere you go nowadays, in any major city around the world, you can see that there are now not only vegan options, but even vegan restaurants, and you see the popularity spreading. Why? Because people are feeling better, people feeling great, and essentially So guys, 2020 all the way to 2030, there is going to be an exponential movement. There has been and there already has in the previous decade. You see the rise of people adopting a plant-based diet has increased more than it has ever in the past 100 years. And essentially because people are finding out the benefit. I would recommend you grab a book that has to do with veganism, because it's going to open up your mind. I've had a lot of my friends and family who have started implementing steps that I don't do this as a business or anything. I just do it out of the goodness of my heart, because I've seen what benefit it has for me. And guys, every single time I come back and they tell me how thankful they were that I introduced them into a plant-based diet. So guys, get your hands on something about plant-based, read up on it, keep an open mind, and you're gonna be surprised with the benefits that you see that this will create. Another alternative I would recommend, if you don't like the heavy reading, is the Engine 2 diet. Now, what you find is that this isn't a diet, it is a program. This guy really had, he was actually a firefighter, and he saw really the cause of leading death, and a lot of his colleagues and firefighters were not the actual fires that they were fighting, but it was actually the diet that they were having. And most of them, right, they had the habits of eating essentially, you know, fried foods and burgers and hot dogs. And so he ended up switching into a plant-based diet, and so did they, and they had some amazing testimonials. So definitely a good book, quick read, and definitely, if you know, probably a better way to start if you want to learn more about a plant-based diet. I'm giving you a triple whammy here. So same author, 3 different books, but I will tell you, you grab any of these books. I really would recommend 3, but I'm gonna make it one recommendation, that this year you read one of his books, the next year you read another one of his books, and the next year you read the 3rd book. They're all equally as important. Now, one thing I think you can get out of the way immediately is outliers. This book is, you know, this is the guy who came up with the concept that in order to master anything, it's gonna take you 10,000 hours of practice and skill. So good reason to read this is because you'll hear real life examples of how those 10,000 hours of practice, what that looks like, because it's hard to grasp what 10,000 hours of practice of something is. And in fact, to practice something, you gotta make sure you're practicing the right thing, right? You could do 10,000 hours of doing the wrong thing and it's not gonna get you the results. So he gives you really good examples here of people who have applied this, documented, and it goes over it. But really, this book is more of a glance. You can go through it very quickly. Basically, the premise of the idea here is, you know, spoiler alert, 10,000 hours to master skill. Next book, I would say, is Blink. And this book, I read this book before I read any other book. Malcolm Gladwell also published this one, and it really talks about, you know, that the moment. It's a shifting book again, right? It's helping you make those decisions, right? Those important decisions that could help you gain momentum in any project that you're currently working on. The next one is The Tipping Point. Tipping Point, this one I would say is probably the most fun book that I've read, the one that I've gotten the most in depth with. And I would say use this book specifically for when you want to really look at fine-tuning any of the regular things that you do on a daily basis, how to get them to start compounding, how to get those small decisions, those little pieces of detailed steps that you're taking every day, and make them have massive impact. I'm talking ripple effect impact. So a good book to do that. I'd say you can't go wrong. Make sure you just read one of Malcolm Gladwell's books because they're all great and they're loaded with value.